Welcome to Honeybee. Don't forget to subscribe, and hit the bell. Real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. I remember that afternoon like it was carved into my memory with a knife. The clock had just struck noon when I decided to leave work early. My husband, Daniel, had been home sick for 2 days. He said he was running a fever and couldn't keep anything down. I believed him without hesitation, because that's what wives do when their husbands say they're not feeling well. The house was quiet when I parked outside. The curtains were drawn halfway, blocking the sunlight that usually filled our living room. I carried a small bag of soup, medicine, and his favorite crackers. Thinking it would cheer him up, I didn't plan to stay long. Just check on him, make sure he'd eaten, and then return to the office. But fate had something else in mind for me that day. As I unlocked the door, I noticed a faint hum of voices inside. It was strange because Daniel wasn't expecting anyone. The TV wasn't on either. It was definitely human voices. My first thought was that maybe his mother had stopped by to take care of him, or perhaps a friend had come to check in. I smiled at the thought. Daniel always had people who cared about him. But as I stepped closer, I realized something wasn't right. The tone of his voice wasn't that of a sick man. He sounded calm, even happy. And the voice he was speaking to, it wasn't his mother's. It was a woman's voice. Soft, familiar, intimate. My hand froze on the doorknob of our bedroom. I shouldn't have listened. I know that now, but my body didn't move. My breath hitched, my heart thudding so loudly I thought they'd hear it from inside. "Are you sure she doesn't suspect anything?" the woman asked, her voice low but playful. Daniel chuckled, a sound I hadn't heard in days. "No, she thinks I'm sick. She even texted earlier asking if I wanted soup. She's too sweet for her own good." The words hit me like a punch in the stomach. Too sweet for her own good. He was talking about me. I stood frozen, my mind refusing to believe what my ears had just heard. Every instinct in me screamed that there had to be a misunderstanding. Maybe it was some kind of cruel joke or something innocent that sounded wrong out of context. But then she laughed again, and the sound of sheets shifting followed. My world started spinning. I could hardly breathe as the truth unfolded in front of me, not with sight but with sound. Daniel wasn't sick. He was in bed with another woman. For a moment, I wanted to burst into the room and scream. I wanted to throw open that door and ask him why. Why me? Why now? After everything we had been through? But something deep inside me, some quiet voice, told me to stop, to listen. I leaned against the wall, trembling, my knees weak, my heart burning. "Don't worry," Daniel said softly. "She's at work till 6. We got plenty of time." Then the woman whispered, "You always say that, but what if she finds out?" "She won't," he replied with that same confident tone that used to make me feel safe. "She trusts me completely." My chest tightened painfully. I trusted him with everything I had, with my time, my love, my loyalty. I had spent years believing our marriage was built on honesty and care. I had never once doubted his faithfulness. Until now, the seconds felt like hours. My vision blurred with tears as I clutched the grocery bag in my hand, the soup spilling a little through the lid. The smell of chicken broth filled the air, and I thought bitterly how I had spent my lunch break worrying about him, why he would betray me in the cruelest way possible. I didn't know what to do. I felt paralyzed, trapped between the desire to run and the need to face the truth. After a long moment, I took a deep breath and stepped quietly back toward the living room. I didn't want them to hear me. I set the bag on the counter, next to the kitchen sink, and wiped my tears with shaking hands. Every memory I had of Daniel played in my mind. Our first date, the night he proposed, the vows we exchanged. I remembered how nervous he looked when he promised to be faithful, how I laughed when he stumbled over his words. All those moments now felt like scenes from someone else's life. How could a man I loved so deeply be capable of this? I sat on the couch, gripping my phone, unsure whether to call someone or just walk away. My thoughts were scattered, my heart shattered. I waited, hoping maybe this nightmare would somehow explain itself. Minutes later, I heard footsteps. Daniel's voice grew louder, followed by the sound of a woman giggling. My hands tightened around my phone as they approached the hallway. I panicked. I didn't want them to see me. I slipped out the front door quietly, leaving it slightly open. My car was parked just a few feet away, so I hid inside, crouching low behind the steering wheel. Through the window, I saw her, tall brunette, wearing one of my husband's T-shirts. My husband's hand was around her waist as he walked her to the door. They kissed softly before she left, laughing as if they hadn't just destroyed someone's world. He closed the door and leaned against it, his expression relaxed. And I sat there in my car, watching the man I had loved for 10 years, feeling like a stranger in my own life. Tears streamed down my face, silent and endless. The air felt too heavy to breathe. I wanted to start the car and drive away, but my body wouldn't move. After a few minutes, Daniel looked out the window and froze. His eyes met mine. He realized I had seen everything. The color drained from his face as he opened the door and stepped outside, his lips parting in shock. "Emily, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. I didn't answer. I just stared at him, at the man who had sworn to love me, who had held me through every storm, who had called me his everything. My throat tightened. "You said you were sick," I finally whispered, "but I guess you just meant sick of me." His mouth opened, but no words came out. He tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. I couldn't stand to be touched by him. Not now. Not after hearing and seeing what he'd done. "Emily, please, just let me explain," he said, desperation creeping into his tone. "Explain what?" I said, my voice breaking. "That you were lonely? That it didn't mean anything? That you were too weak to tell me the truth?" He lowered his head, ashamed. For once, the confident, charming man I'd married looked small, pathetic even. I turned away, tears blurring my vision. "I came home to check on you because I cared," I said quietly. "And now I wish I hadn't." Without another word, I got into my car and drove away. I don't remember the drive, just the feeling of my hands shaking on the steering wheel and my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I pulled over once I was far enough away and screamed into my hands until there was nothing left but silence. That silence followed me for days. I didn't go back home that night. I stayed at my sister's place, unable to tell her the truth right away. I just said we'd had an argument, but inside I was crumbling. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel with her, laughing, touching, lying. I thought about how easily he had deceived me, about the little moments that had suddenly taken on new meaning, the late-night work calls, the extra showers, the way he avoided intimacy for weeks claiming stress or exhaustion. The truth had been there all along. I had just refused to see it. By the next morning, I had 1,000 questions but no courage to ask them. I wanted to believe there was a reason, a misunderstanding, something that could make this nightmare less real. But deep down, I already knew. The man I loved was gone. Or maybe he had never truly been who I thought he was. And as I sat there in my sister's guest room, staring at my phone lighting up with his messages and missed calls, I realized that sometimes the worst pain doesn't come from losing someone. It comes from discovering who they really are. I didn't respond to Daniel's calls for 2 days. Every time his name appeared on my screen, my heart sank all over again. The messages were all the same. Apologies, excuses, desperate pleas for me to talk. "Please, Emily, it was a mistake. We need to talk. I can explain everything. Don't throw our marriage away over one stupid thing." But what he called one stupid thing had destroyed everything we had built. By the 3rd day, I finally agreed to see him, not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I needed closure. I needed to hear the truth from his own lips. When I arrived at our house, the same house where I once felt safe and loved, it felt foreign. The air was heavy, and the warmth that once filled those rooms had vanished. Daniel was sitting on the couch, looking exhausted. His eyes were red, and his hands were trembling slightly as he stood up when I entered. "Emily," he said softly, "thank you for coming." I didn't answer right away. I walked past him, putting a careful distance between us. The couch where he had once wrapped his arms around me now felt like a battlefield. "Who is she?" I asked finally. My voice was steady, but my heart wasn't. He hesitated, then looked down at the floor. Her name is Claire, he said. She's someone I met at work. I nodded slowly, trying to keep my composure. And how long has it been going on? He ran a hand through his hair and sighed. About 3 months. 3 months. 90 days of lies. 90 days of pretending to be the man I trusted. Why? I asked quietly. What did I do wrong, Daniel? Was I not enough for you? His eyes darted up. No. God, no, Emily. You were perfect. It's not about that. I felt lost. I'd been stressed about work, and she was just easy to talk to. It got out of control. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. Easy to talk to. That's what people say when they want to excuse betrayal. So you destroy our marriage because someone was easy to talk to? I said bitterly. Do you even hear yourself? I didn't mean for it to happen, he said, his voice cracking. I made a mistake, and I hate myself for it. I took a deep breath, trying to hold back tears. You didn't make a mistake, Daniel. You made a choice. A mistake is spilling coffee or forgetting a meeting. What you did was a decision. Every time you texted her, called her, met her, you decided to betray me. He flinched. You're right, he whispered. I deserve whatever you decide. Silence filled the room for a moment. I looked around, at the photos on the wall, the life we had built together. Each memory now felt tainted, every smile fake in hindsight. Did you love her? I asked suddenly. He looked shocked by the question. No, he said quickly. It wasn't love. It was stupid. She meant nothing to me. Then why risk everything for someone who meant nothing? I asked softly. He had no answer. Tears burned my eyes as I looked at him. The man I once believed would protect my heart for life. Now, he was the one who had shattered it. I spent years believing we were unbreakable. I said, I stood by you when times were hard, when money was tight, when you lost your job. I believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself. And all that time, I never imagined you'd be the one to destroy us. Daniel stepped closer, his voice trembling. Please, Emily, don't give up on us. We can fix this. I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. I shook my head slowly. You can't fix something once trust is gone. Love can survive a lot of things, Daniel, but not betrayal. It changes everything. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I couldn't bear his touch, not after knowing he had held someone else with those same hands. I turned toward the door, ready to leave, but before I did, I looked back one last time. I came home that day because I was worried about you. I said quietly, I thought you were sick. I wanted to take care of you. But it turns out I was the one who got sick of believing in lies. And with that, I walked out. The days that followed felt like living in slow motion. I filed for separation the next week. It wasn't easy. Every time I looked at our wedding ring, my chest ached. But I knew staying would only destroy me further. Daniel tried to reach out again, letters, emails, messages through friends. He begged for forgiveness, promised a change, even admitted that the affair ended the same day I found out. But I couldn't go back. Some wounds don't heal, even if the bleeding stops. I focused on rebuilding myself. I moved into a small apartment near my sister's house. It wasn't much, but it was mine, my space, my peace. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since before the marriage. It gave me comfort to put my emotions into color when words weren't enough. At night, though, the silence still hurt. Sometimes I'd catch myself remembering the good times, Sunday mornings with coffee, road trips, laughter that used to fill the air. And then I'd remind myself that those memories belonged to a version of him that no longer existed. Healing wasn't fast. It came in pieces, through tears, long walks, and moments of self-reflection. I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing yourself from the weight of what someone did to you. One evening, months later, I saw Daniel again by accident. I was at a cafe downtown, reading quietly when he walked in. He looked thinner, older somehow. When he saw me, he froze for a moment before giving a small, unsure smile. "Emily," he said softly, approaching the table. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to get up and leave, but another part of me, the one that still wanted peace, stayed seated. He sat down across from me. "You look good," he said gently. "Healthier." "I am," I replied. "I've been taking care of myself." He nodded, his eyes filled with regret. "I wanted to say thank you," he began, "for walking away when you did. It forced me to face what I'd become. I've been going to therapy trying to understand why I threw everything away." I stayed quiet, listening. He seemed sincere, but his words couldn't undo the past. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he continued. "I just want to tell you I'm sorry, truly sorry. You didn't deserve any of it." For the first time in months, I felt something shift inside me. Not love, not anger, but peace. I looked at him and said, "I forgive you, Daniel. Not for you, but for me. Holding on to the pain was only hurting me more. But forgiveness doesn't mean we can go back." He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "I understand." We sat there for a few minutes in silence before he stood to leave. As he walked away, I felt a strange calmness. It was over, truly over. The man who once defined my world had become a chapter in my story, not the whole book. Months passed. Life began to feel normal again. I started smiling without forcing it. I spent weekends with family, went on trips with friends, and rediscovered who I was outside of being someone's wife. One afternoon, while cleaning my apartment, I found an old photo of us from our honeymoon, both of us laughing, sunburned, holding hands by the sea. I stared at it for a long moment, then placed it in a box with other memories I no longer needed, because I realized something. The past doesn't have to be erased, but it doesn't have to define the future either. I had loved Daniel once, deeply, honestly, but love isn't enough when trust is broken. I learned to love myself again, to wake up each day without fear, to understand that losing someone who lied to you isn't really a loss. It's freedom. Now, whenever I look back on that day, the day I came home at noon to check on my sick husband, I don't think of it as the day my life fell apart. I think of it as the day I woke up from a lie. Because sometimes the truth may destroy what you thought you had, but it also gives you the strength to build something better.